Hello, what's going on, everyone? Today we are going to read this paper called Small Data for Big Insights in Ecology. This was published in Trends in Ecology and Evolution by Lindsay Tartman, Alex Bush, and Emilia Hood in July 2023. Okay, so let's get right into it. This is an opinion piece. We'll read we'll read all of it and then have a discussion on what we think about the paper. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, big data science has significantly furthered our understanding of complex systems by harnessing large volumes of data generated at high velocity and in great variety. However, there is a risk that big data collection is prioritized to the detriment of small data with few observations. This poses a particular risk to ecology where small data abounds. Machine learning experts are increasingly looking to small data to drive the next generation of innovation, leading to development in methods for small data such as transfer learning, knowledge graphs, and synthetic data. Meanwhile, meta analysis and causal reasoning approaches are evolving to provide new insights from small data. These advances should add value to high quality small data, catalyzing future insights for ecology. The highlights are the specific context and characteristics of ecological studies mean data sets are often small and poorly suited to many advanced analytical approaches. Some important ecological insights can only be derived from small data, so its collection should not be neglected. Ongoing advances in studies, design, data analysis, and machine learning methods increase the value of small data beyond the intrinsic purpose for which they are originally collected. These methods include transfer learning, generating synthetic data, using causal model structures, and new approaches to collating small data. The greatest opportunity will arise if the reusability of small data is improved. The small data trend. In a world that creates zettabytes of data each year, we are living in the big data. They have a list of glossaries that we'll get to in a moment, but let's just skim through this first. In the big data era, big data has enabled significant progress in many disciplines, including ecology, and continues to promise further advances. New technologies are enabling ecological data to be collected at an unprecedented rate, and for some, it is easy to assume that big data is necessary to improve our understanding of complex problems. One may therefore question the value of expensive studies that culminate in a handful of data points. By contrast, many leading data scientists, companies, and trend analysts predict that the greatest advances in our capability and knowledge will be driven by methods that utilize small data. Such advances will greatly increase the range of problems available for analysis and broaden the insights that can be drawn. We hope this paper will help inspire ecologists to see the opportunities that are emerging to integrate and maximize their research outputs at all levels. Small data and big data represent two ends of a continuum. Big data is typically considered as high volume composed of a complex mix of data types and may also be generated and processed at high speed. Conversely, small data contain a small volume of one or few measurement types, may have inconsistent structure, and may only be generated intermittently or even as a one off. As a result, models analyzing small data have a greater risk of overfitting because the number of features in a model are high relative to the degrees of freedom in the dataset. Overfitting leads to models that are influenced by patterns in the sample data that are not present in the population, thus leading to spurious predictions that generalize poorly to new data. In very small data, This may mean no model can be fitted and trends in the data cannot be interpreted. As a result, the legacy value of small data to advance our collective knowledge is considered proportionately small, rather than recognizing their value for offering unique insights about rare events or providing tailor made answers to specific questions. I think this is an important point. Uh, that small data is important to analyze, but it obviously, the reason it's less popular is because it is not typical. And this is the whole point of them bringing it up. But this unique rare events and specific questions is something that you have to be careful with, I suppose. Like, say, for example, if you have an opportunity to do uh, small data, would you go for or do something with big data with lower resolution? You might choose the big data just because you know that's where the funding is, that's where you can get the most out of it, and you know it's possible because given the choice of these two, big data is just the easier way to go. Plus, there is more opportunity to go for big data rather than small data. Um, because again, rare events is not very common. That's why it's rare, right? Okay. In our opinion, small data is particularly important for ecological community for several reasons. Firstly, ecology incorporates mission-oriented disciplines, conservation and agriculture, and collecting small data facilitates rapid, tailored, evidence-based decision making. Secondly, understanding rarity is fundamental to ecology, and small data are needed to do this. Thirdly, many data collection methods are costly and too time consuming to scale up to generate big data. This is particularly true in habitats where data collection is particularly arduous, like rainforests and deep soil. And these are often understudied habitats that can provide unique insights. Application of new methods for small data as well as amendments to enhance their usability could therefore help to maximize the value of ecological data either for standalone use or as part of our collective understanding. Okay, I'm going to try and highlight so I don't forget mission oriented disciplines and small data versus rapid decision making. So the I think yes, it is important to make quick decisions, especially when like conservation and agriculture, where the turnaround you got to be really quick with this. Sometimes things just need to happen, and you need the data and give an answer right away. The downside, obviously, with small data, and I guess with rapid decision making, is that you you have some data, but that's perhaps insufficient for the grand scheme of things. That's why we always talk about sample size. Sample size needs to be bigger. Sample size. We need sample size this is because we want to avoid making decisions that are uh, incorrect. It's not really incorrect, I suppose. It could be correct. The chances of it being correct versus incorrect, it's like closer to being correct because just by chance, I think. Oh well, I'm not sure. I just think at the moment, I think small data is just a bit too, um, what's the word? You're not modeling it, so you're just like, okay, this is a trend we're seeing, let's do it. Let's just do this thing, or let's not do this thing, for example. But let's continue reading. The second one is understanding rarity. I needed to do this. Yeah, small data are needed to do this. Yeah, sometimes that's all you have, and I find this interesting. Even with big data, there is like the rarer part of that big data that could be analyzed, and it's still very interesting. Um, drawing conclusions from small data. I feel like even with big data, we struggle as a community in ecology and microbiology and so many different ones. That's why meta-analysis are trying to pull things together and do everything at the same time to just, strengthen our ability to say this works. Like that's why science takes so long and because it it's yes, it's interesting to look at rare stuff, but they're very, very hard to say, oh, yes, this does that. It's just harder, especially with small data. Um, Costly and time consuming. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Um, there are a lot of studies that start off small as a pilot, and then you decide later on if you want to scale it up to a big data study. hmm Particularly arduous. Okay. Uses and value of small data. Intrinsic value. Small data sets are often collected with a particular purpose in mind, for example, a research hypothesis or a monitoring exercise that offer direct insights into the standalone dataset. Controlled experiments may only be able to collect a modest amount of information, but they are an important tool for facilitating rapid, tailored, evidence based decision making and add to a scientific understanding of causal interactions in ecology. Counterfactuals can be observed as much as is practically possible, example using matching method. Counterfactual, there we go, this is the glossary. Expresses that would have happened if a treatment had not been applied. In design experiments, this is typically the control treatment to which any other treatment are compared. But experiments are often expensive and time consuming, leading to small data. These approaches are widely used in ecology, spanning manipulative experiments where conditions are actively influenced and observational experiments where differences between existing conditions are measured. The design of these experiments is important to increase the value of the data that are collected and enable causal inference. Equally, resource constraints mean trade-offs between the scale, frequency, and quality of measurements are implicit in all field studies. So, while empirical evidence to guide policies and mitigate the global decline of biodiversity is key, our understanding is also inherently constrained by the fact that most species are rare. A single approach will not work for all species, and therefore the value of monitoring data collected for modeling rare species depends on a careful, potentially even bespoke design. I really, really, really like this line. It just points out how important it is to have incredibly good experimental design for the exact purpose you're doing it. You can't upscale it because it doesn't work. There's only one of these species. They only exist here. They're about to go extinct. That's all we got. We are not studying one individual. We're not studying the we're not studying like a million individuals. We're just studying the entire population. So you're not modeling it because you can't. This is the whole population. You're not getting a representative community, you're getting the whole population, right? So and that's what's interesting about studying rare species in my opinion, and this line, love it. In addition to study design, using analytical methods appropriate for small data can support new insights and increase the predictive performance of models. For example, regularization methods can be used for linear models with small sample sizes, while in machine learning, support vector machines are a common method for small data. I don't know what this is, but cool. Dimension reduction approaches can also improve model performance. That's something I would like to read up on. We'll get back to that later. Collating. Conceptually, the simplest method to reuse small data is to link small data sets together so they become more big data like. One increasingly popular method is knowledge graphs. Okay, where is knowledge graphs? It's somewhere in here. There we go. A graph-based structure that integrates data by encoding values of individual data points and relationships between them. Okay, yeah, that's just a graph, right? Okay, like as in I thought that would be a network graph, but okay, that makes sense. Which represents the relationships between different data in a flexible and machine readable way. Unlike relational databases, in which the relationships between data are implicit to the data structure, data are stored in columns and relationships between columns and known with each row corresponding to an individual. So what they're saying, unlike relational, in which data are between to the data structure, instead knowledge graphs store the relational information for each data point as data in its own right. Okay. They can integrate the data and related contextual information from multiple sources. By storing the data and the type of relationship between them as a series of nodes and edges, knowledge graphs enable novel queries about the linkages between data. Okay, I'm gonna have a look at table 1. I know we're skipping ahead, but I'm interested. Transfer learning synthetic data. Okay, this is just a summary of what it is. Okay, let's just go back up. Cool. This is interesting. Got to read up a lot more. Evidence synthesis, such as meta-analysis, is important for understanding causality in ecology, because when similar effects are seen in multiple studies, it builds evidence for the causal mechanism behind the treatments. Conducting a meta-analysis can be time-consuming, particularly when linking several small studies, and one challenge is to increase evidence synthesis efficiency. Approaches to do this include automating the data collection process and dynamic meta-analysis. Which improves the transferability to different contexts. Transferability means what does it mean in this case? The ability to reuse knowledge from relevant previous learning. Okay. Another challenge for data collated from small studies is missing data and differences in study structure. Bayesian meta-analysis could overcome these challenges and is commonly used in disciplines such as medicine, but has received less attention in ecology. Yeah, that's true. I know a few people doing Bayesian analysis, but not Bayesian meta-analysis, and understandably so. You're working with very different types of species here, right? Even if you're looking at birds, for example, there are so many different birds, so many different study systems. People are collecting data from using different methods to collect the same measurements. For example, some of it's standardized. I agree. Things like body mass, tarsus length, very standardized, I suppose. But yeah, just the terminology could be different. Time scales could be different. I could say, uh, this female is good at reproduction in this system, but it's in terms of the number of offsprings produced, it could be completely different if it was a different system. Okay, transfer learning. AI methods have typically required big training datasets to allow computers to learn the rules for a classification problem from scratch. Transfer learning leverages existing big datasets with a lot of labeled information to train the architecture of a model that may include millions of parameters, and that prime structure is then applied to solve a problem in an analogous way for small data. Thus, while all models aim to generalize an understanding to unseen data based on patterns within the training data, transfer learning does so for an entirely new task while retaining knowledge of the generic processes in the parent model. Transfer learning is effective because neural networks start by identifying features that are common to a wide variety of tasks, whereas later layers are more specific to the features upon which the models was trained. Thus, base layers from an existing model are often a better starting point for a wide variety of tasks than random initializations, but tuning is required to decide at which point to split the model for a new task. In imagery, base features like texture waveform, vector recognition, and contiguous regions of contrast are all identified early on by neural networks. As a result, models trained on the generic image database ImageNet have then been tuned to classify other images such as photos of diseased plant leaves and by treating spectrograms as images for identification of birds and frogs from audio. One approach for transfer learning is to design a deep learning model that solves multiple tasks, sharing layers at first for all tasks and preserving generality before subsequently splitting task-specific layers. A more common alternative is to use an existing pre-trained deep learning model, Keras applications, or Microsoft ML packages for both R and Python users, and only replace the last layers to suit the new small data task. This approach is particularly popular for image and audio processing because the pre-trained model can dramatically reduce the size of the input dataset and computational time. Okay, haven't heard of these. Very good. Syntactic data. In many situations, small data can be supplemented prior to the application of machine learning by the addition of computer-generated syntactic data. These data are generated in a systematic way to incorporate key characteristics of the small data. While the noise in the data is varied, the simplest form of data generation is data augmentation, whereby the original small data are transformed or distorted to provide alternative instances of the data. These may be cropping or transposing for image processing, a change in pitch or noise overlay for an audio sample, or applying transformations such as radio basis function. However, these augmentation methods are still based on the original sample and generalizability can be limited. Generalizability? Generalization of data? I guess that's what it means, but what do they say it means? The ability of a model to perform well for previously unseen data. Yep, okay. More complex methods to generate syntactic data aim to create new samples with characteristics similar to the original data points. For image analysis, methods include generative adversarial networks and variational autoencoders. So it's GANs and VAEs. A statistical model can also be used to generate data with similar statistical characteristics to a small data set. Syntactic data of this kind is still related to the small data set from which statistical characteristics have been estimated, but within the syntactic data set, more examples of the expected noise are included, so that the noise is not overfitted in a machine learning model. I don't understand. Okay. Another alternative is to use a causal model of the relevant process to capture the key signals that should also theoretically be present in the small data set. While this clearly requires some insight into causal processes, these could be hypothetical and can be tested with a small data set. Syntactic data could still be useful predictively even if it includes a number of realizations that are not present in the true population, as long as sufficient samples are present in the population. Although these would decrease algorithm efficiency, where reasonable causal model exists and risks of extrapolation of knowledge are considered. This could provide a powerful way to supplement small data in a way that goes beyond the characteristics of the original data by drawing on broader process understanding. Okay, I don't really get it. So what I understood was you duplicate basically the same data set. If it's an image, you just transpose it, um, maybe change the lighting on it or something, whatever it is, like make it slightly different, crop it slightly different. If it's an audio sample, like they said over here, change the pitch or noise overlay. So that creates more random. So from a single data point, now there is a standard deviation that you created for it essentially. And then the machine learning technique would try to figure out what fits best, including that. But then you're basically duplicating your data. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, the fit will be even better. I don't know. Isn't it overfitting? Am I getting it wrong? I don't know. Okay, whatever. Let's look at figure one. Uses of small data. See table one for advances in these areas. Okay, so collating, you can collate a lot of small data together. Big data, you get the generic structure and then transfer knowledge, and then use small data to fine tune to target, and then you have a very specific target. Okay, so supplementing both of them together. Intrinsic value is, I think, one of the first arguments they made, right? Probably the first one, which is it is important. Period. If you if there is no other option, small data is better than no data. And yeah, it has value. Causal reasoning. We haven't got to this yet, so let's go to synthetic data first. Okay. Small data points, so those are there. Augmented data within a range with high similarity to data set. So the circle is new data that is from that, right? So from the small data points, you create new data points, I think. And then characteristic based data generation. So that's what you get from it. And then causal model based data generation, depending on accuracy of causal model. So it could be slightly wrong, but overall it improves it, is what it's saying, I think. And causal reasoning. You get multiple small data, you put it into a scientific literature and expert understanding. You text mine, and expert elicits citation, which means, I think, this you just find similarities across small data, and this one you get an expert to like actually find similarities across stuff and then make a quick decision. Okay, I think we're gonna get to it. Table one's quite a lot. I'm gonna skip it. I think all it does is goes through each of it and then gives you a few references if you want to go to read more. So basically what I'm saying is I'm gonna read some of these papers and we're gonna do it more on this channel as well, but no promises. And I'm not reading them now. Okay. Causal reasoning. Causal inference can be used in a number of different approaches, from machine learning to decision support tools. It is of increasing interest in machine learning to overcome the criticism that the structure of these approaches is a black box. With growth in explainable AI and causal AI that make algorithmic reasoning more explicit by drawing on existing understanding or by inferring causality from data. Bayesian networks have been used in a range of contexts in ecology and offer a way to combine empirical data with a wider body of knowledge for applications such as risk assessments. In ecology, the causal structure is often elicited from experts. In many cases, these experts are researchers in the topic whose expertise has developed through previous work, including the collection and analysis of small data. Structural equation modeling and Bayesian belief networks are important methods for quantitative causal Modeling and small data can play an important role in both establishing the causal structure of a model and in parameterizing specific links within the model. What is this? Okay, wait, what's this? I'm gonna go check. Structural equation model. A multivariate statistical analysis technique that originated from causal modeling and uses a hierarchical structure to capture the relationship between measured and unobserved variables. Yeah, latent variables. Yeah, okay, cool. The other one was Bayesian something. Bayesian belief network, a probabilistic graphical model that captures the relationship between variables in a series of nodes and edges, useful for causal reasoning in uncertain domains. Cool. Gonna read a lot more. I'm scared. Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. I feel like the more I'm reading, the more I don't know, but that's good. Similarly, natural language processing is increasingly being applied to scientific text to learn causal model structures. Rather than using small data directly, an algorithm takes a researcher's description of their data sets, analyzes and results, and recognizes causal words and phrases. X increases Y. To develop a model of causal interaction. While this relies on the accuracy of statements in published papers, justifiable approaches of this kind are linking the individual insights drawn by researchers and can be used to look for common patterns across multiple sources. Interesting, that's pretty good. Natural language processing. Reusability of data and insights. Many of the methods presented in this paper depend on the ability to integrate small data with other datasets, big or small. Such integration is easiest if datasets meet the FAIR data principles and are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Significant efforts have been made to increase the fairness of datasets, such as many funders and ecology journals now mandating public data archiving, but the majority of datasets in ecology still do not meet fair research principles. For example, 64% of authors in ecology and evolution archive the data in a way that prevents reuse. Reporting guidelines such as checklists have become increasingly common in the field for medicine in the past 2 decades. And these guidelines have successfully improved reporting standards. The wide uptake of reporting guidelines in medicine has been facilitated by the widespread endorsement in medical journals and the development of an online library of searchable guidelines. Ecologists also need support to reformat their data in a way that makes it reusable, as the format used for an individual study is rarely the most appropriate structure to enable reuse. An infrastructure that provides access to data management specialists is needed along with time for data formatting, and this requires sufficient funding. Improved infrastructure, wider uptake of reporting guidelines, and fair data principle ecology will increase the impact of small data by increasing the ability to integrate and amalgamate data sets. Meanwhile, we recognize that reusability may not be pragmatic for the most nuanced data sets for which it is difficult for the data to conform to existing standards. Yet we propose that the causal understanding derived from these data is a knowledge fragment that could be reused. Clear reporting of the key findings and contextual factors using common ontologies and phrasing for causal interactions could enable mining of literature to develop causal models. In Bayesian network models, network fragments or idioms are developed to capture patterns of reasoning that are commonly used within a discipline so that they can be used elsewhere. While small data may not be capturing common patterns, capturing the understanding from a small data study in a machine-readable format such as a knowledge graph will allow understanding to be integrated by looking for recurring, overlapping, or contradicting causal networks. This could enable rapid integration of causal understanding from small data studies and highlight areas where understanding is most uncertain. Okay, yeah, just standardizing, making it fair, everyone should be publishing using the same terminology, and get a lot of, what's the word? You should archive all your data. Concluding remarks. Significant advances in data science and machine learning now allow small data and ecology to be viewed differently. And given the active interest in small data methods across many fields, the new methods are likely to emerge in the near future with applicability to ecology. See outstanding questions. This paper aims to highlight the growing range of uses of small data available to ecological research community and add further support to good data management to improve data reusability, be these raw data sets or key knowledge fragments drawn from complex research studies, and emphasize the continuing importance of small data of high quality so that valuable data collection of this kind is not neglected due to new methods of data collection. Though widely available, small data is underused and deprioritized by data scientists and funders. We recommend that it is prioritized. In the words of John Ruskin, it is small, if you will, but when you begin to think of things rightly, the ideas of smallness and largeness pass away. Awesome, that's pretty good. Let's read the outstanding questions I think could be useful. Where else can these methods for small data be applied to draw new insights in ecology? How can synthetic data from numerous process-based models in ecology be used appropriately to enable new insights from small data while respecting the uncertainty in process-based models? And how should small data be collected to increase the effectiveness of synthetic data methods? How can the understanding from analysis of small data be captured in a way that enables reuse of this knowledge fragment? How can we effectively incentivize data sharing to build further momentum to increase good data management and sharing practices? Very good questions. I love it. I don't have answers for them. I think the last one is the only one I see a potential way to do it, but even then it's hard. When you're asking for good data management and sharing practices, it's a multi-layered thing. The raw data you're getting is different because it's from a different source, but also the processing of every single step needs to be standardized across every single experiment. And that's not happening because there is no single best method. The methods are constantly being developed and everyone's using the latest method or the latest best method. And in terms of like analyzing and storing data and naming data, and yeah, I think those are still doable. It's just tough. Even then, I feel like obviously it's still necessary and journals should be encouraging this. Yeah, but no, overall good paper, very interesting. I would love to break it down further, but honestly, don't understand it enough for me to break it down in its entirety. And given that I'm still learning this, I think this is interesting, but I don't know what to say. So we're gonna leave it there. This is interesting. This is good paper. If you enjoyed it, go check out this paper and read it for yourself. Small data for big insights in ecology. Really good paper. Would recommend 10 out of 10. All right, see you next time. Bye bye.